Pooh Shiesty didn't just get accused. He got surrounded by something way heavier. And this isn't about gossip or random internet talk. This is about paperwork, real federal documents, a proffer sitting on record, statements connected to his own legal side, and then the part that really hits different. His own father, the man he trusted his whole life, allegedly tied to government cooperation going all the way back to 2009. And if that wasn't enough to shake everything, then comes Gucci Mane, the same man who helped build his career, now connected to a situation that allegedly fed information into a case that could destroy everything. And suddenly this stops feeling like one story and starts looking like layers on top of layers. Everywhere you look, there's another angle, another claim, another piece falling into place. And the culture right now is reacting in real time, because nobody expected it to explode like this from every direction at once. So stay with me and don't skip anything, because we're about to break this down step by step. The robbery, the ankle monitor, the legal details, the family history, the alleged cooperation, the receipts people keep talking about, and what all of this could really mean moving forward. Because by the end of this, you'll understand why people are calling this one of the most overwhelming situations hip-hop has seen in a long time. But to really understand it, you can't just look at what's happening now. You have to go back and understand who Pooh Shiesty was supposed to be, where he came from, and why this downfall feels so different. Memphis, Tennessee, a place where things are real whether you like it or not. A city that doesn't create fake images but produces people who speak from lived experiences. And from the beginning, Pooh Shiesty carried that energy, raw delivery, direct stories, no filter, the kind of presence that makes people believe what they're hearing, because it doesn't sound performed, it sounds lived, and that authenticity became the foundation of everything he built. And when he linked with Gucci Mane's 1017, it looked like the perfect setup. Experience meeting raw hunger, structure meeting real energy, one bringing the system, the other bringing something you can't fake. And for a moment, it really worked. The momentum felt natural, the buzz felt real. The kind of rise you can't buy or force. The kind that spreads because people actually believe in it. His name started moving, conversations started growing, and it felt like the beginning of something bigger, something that could last. But then 2021 came and everything shifted completely. Sometimes when artists come home, the moment is already gone, the energy fades, the sound feels outdated, and the culture has already shifted to the next wave. But that didn't happen with Pooh Shiesty. He stepped back in, and it was like nothing had changed. His voice still carried weight. His presence still felt real. And when he dropped that record with FTO, it hit instantly. Conversations lit up across every platform. People were reposting, reacting, debating, and it felt like the streets were fully behind him again. Like he never left. Like this was the comeback everyone had been waiting for. And for a second, it actually felt like a rare kind of story. The kind where everything turns around and ends right. But that's exactly where things take a turn nobody expected. Because while he was celebrating freedom and the culture was embracing him again, there were moves happening behind the scenes that would quietly build into something way bigger than anyone realized, something that would flip everything upside down. And it all comes down to one number: 9 days. That's all that stood between him and complete freedom. 9 days until the ankle monitor came off, until the restrictions ended, until he could finally move without being tracked every second. And that's when everything fell apart. So listen closely, because every detail from here sounds more unreal than the last. In January 2026, Pooh Shiesty, along with his father, Lantrell Williams Sr., his close associate Big 30, whose real name is Rodney Lamont Wright Jr., and several others allegedly showed up at a recording studio in Dallas, Texas. But this wasn't music. This wasn't business as usual. According to federal authorities, this was planned, calculated, and executed with a purpose. It was presented as a meeting tied to his situation with Gucci Mane's 1017 label. But behind that setup, there were reported tensions, money disputes, control issues, and a growing frustration about being tied to a deal he no longer wanted. And instead of handling it through contracts or legal routes, prosecutors claim a different decision was made, one that would change everything. Inside that studio, things escalated fast, the door blocked, weapons drawn, pressure applied, one person forced to sign documents under threat, another nearly losing consciousness, valuables taken in seconds, chaos replacing what was supposed to be a meeting. And the part that makes it almost impossible to process is that the entire time Pooh Shiesty was wearing an ankle monitor, still under federal supervision, every step tracked, every movement recorded, and it didn't stop there. He was already aware that someone inside that environment was law enforcement, not just security, but an actual officer with a duty to report what happened. And somehow none of that slowed things down. And just hours later, according to reports, items taken from that situation started appearing online. watches, jewelry, everything being shown publicly with timestamps. And from that point, the case didn't need to be built. It started building itself. Location data, video footage, eyewitness testimony, digital evidence, records, all lining up piece by piece into something prosecutors could not ignore. On April 2nd, 2026, everything turned official when federal prosecutors charged Pooh Shiesty, his father Lantrell Williams Sr., Big 30, and several others with conspiracy to commit kidnapping and kidnapping itself. Charges so serious they carry the possibility of life in prison for every person involved. And that's the part that hits the hardest. 9 days away from complete freedom, now staring at the rest of his life behind bars. But somehow it didn't stop there, because once the indictment became public, the internet didn't just react. It went into overdrive. People started breaking down every page, every line, searching for details, and one small detail turned into a massive spark. The documents listed one of the victims as RD, and DJ academics quickly pointed out what many were already thinking, that RD likely stood for Radrick Davis, the real name of Gucci Mane. And suddenly the story shifted again, because those same documents indicated that RD identified the individuals involved, pointing out names, confirming presence, and even linking investigators toward Big 30's social media, and just like that, the narrative exploded. Within hours, Gucci Mane went from being seen as a victim to being labeled by large parts of the culture as something else entirely, and the reaction spread fast. Clips went viral, including one showing an inmate tossing Gucci Mane's book over a prison railing, a moment that symbolized how quickly public opinion had already decided. But here's where things need to slow down, because this is where perception started outrunning facts. One key detail changes everything. Gucci Mane's security wasn't just security. It included an off-duty police officer, and that matters. Because a sworn officer doesn't have the option to stay silent after witnessing something like that. Their job, their career, and even their own freedom depends on reporting exactly what they saw, meaning that statement was coming regardless of anyone else's involvement. And legal observers have pointed out something else. The case itself didn't rely on one person speaking. There was already location tracking, video footage, eyewitness accounts, digital evidence, records, all forming a case that stood on its own. And through all of this, Gucci Mane has remained silent publicly. No statements, no responses, nothing, while the conversation kept growing louder. And then another layer surfaced when WAC 100 stepped in, bringing up allegations that Pooh Shiesty's father had a history tied to cooperation dating back years. Claims backed by what he described as documentation, suggesting a past agreement involving providing information, something tied to legal reductions. And if true, it adds a dimension that feels almost impossible to ignore, because it means long before any of this, before the fame, before the case, there may have already been a story unfolding behind the scenes that Pooh Shiesty himself may have never even known about. And now, while Pooh Shiesty sits in federal custody, already facing the possibility of life behind bars, he's watching something unfold in real time that most people couldn't even process. His father's past being pushed out across the internet, everywhere at once, every platform, every conversation, like the worst possible moment somehow finding a way to get even worse. And that's exactly how one commentator described it, saying it's like you're already living your darkest day, and then everything else just keeps piling on top of it. But the story doesn't stop with his father, because WAC 100 had already been making claims long before this moment, going back to 2022 when Pooh Shiesty was dealing with his earlier case, accusing him of allegedly cooperating during that situation, saying there was a proffer, that he sat down with prosecutors and laid everything out, something that supposedly helped reduce his sentence. And those claims didn't just sit quietly, they turned into a public battle, because his lawyer Bradford Cohen immediately pushed back, calling it nonsense and insisting that no cooperation ever happened, saying their defense was based on blaming the alleged victims instead. And then Pooh Shiesty himself spoke up, denying it directly, while his mother also stepped in publicly, turning it into a back and forth that played out in front of everyone, with both sides standing firm on completely different versions of the truth. And then something happened that made people look at everything differently. Just days after that Dallas situation, before anyone even knew what had taken place, Pooh Shiesty went online, held up paperwork, and made it clear he wasn't folding, sending a message about loyalty while, according to reports, federal investigators were already building a case around him. And that timing is something people still can't ignore, because it feels like two completely different realities happening at once. And as all of this spread, the impact reached every corner of hip-hop. Gucci Mane's image took a hit regardless of context. Old clips resurfaced and got repackaged, pushed out like they were connected to this moment even when they weren't. And once that narrative caught fire, it moved too fast to control. The image of that inmate throwing his book became a symbol. Not just a reaction, but a statement, showing how quickly opinions had already been formed. And then even artists like 21 Savage got pulled into the conversation just for showing support, turning it into a bigger discussion about loyalty, about where people stand when serious allegations are involved, about what it really means to ride for someone when everything is on the line, while Big 30 now stands in the same case facing the same possible outcome, a partnership that once looked unstoppable now hanging by a thread. And in the middle of all of this is the family side, something that hits deeper than anything else, because Pooh Shiesty built his identity on a code, and now that same code is being questioned in ways he may have never seen coming. And even the music, the comeback record that once felt like a fresh start, now carries a completely different weight, because everything surrounding it has changed. And when you step back and really look at it, this situation becomes bigger than one person. It becomes about decisions, pressure, and the feeling of being stuck in something you don't know how to escape. He didn't see a clean way out, and that pressure, that feeling of being boxed in with no real exit, is what people believe set everything in motion. But here's the part that matters more than anything. That feeling isn't unique to Pooh Shiesty. It's something the industry has been creating for decades. Artists come in with nothing, sign deals they barely understand, build a name, grow their value, and then realize the terms they agreed to don't match who they've become. And that cycle has been repeating for over 30 years. It's been documented, talked about, exposed, but never truly fixed. And yet, even with all of that, the difference always comes down to choices. Because there were options, there are always options, lawyers, negotiations, buyouts, leverage through success. Especially when his comeback proved he still had real demand, real influence, real power. He could have fulfilled obligations and walked away clean. Others have done it before, without destroying everything. And that's what makes this situation harder to process. Because when you look at the execution, it doesn't feel like desperation. It feels like something else entirely. This is someone who had already served years in federal custody, who came home to a second chance that most people never get, with the culture behind him, support everywhere, momentum building again, all while wearing an ankle monitor that tracked every step, knowing law enforcement was already connected to that environment, knowing he was just 9 days away from complete freedom, and still, according to reports, choosing to step into something that would risk it all, and then watching it escalate. Further, with actions that only added more attention, more evidence, more pressure. That's not survival instinct. That's the kind of mindset where consequences don't feel real until they are. And when that line gets crossed, the system doesn't hesitate to respond. So now the bigger question isn't just about what happened, it's about what it means. At what point does a code stop protecting people and start trapping them? When does loyalty become something that puts you in situations you can't escape from? Because a code that demands silence no matter what doesn't always protect the person following it. Sometimes it protects the situation itself. And that's why this story feels bigger than one moment. It's about talent caught in pressure, about decisions shaped by environment, about family histories that surface when it's already too late, about an industry that builds people up without always giving them a way out, and about how close someone can get to a different future before making the one choice that shuts that door completely because everything was there. The music, the comeback, the support, all of it was real. And it all came down to 9 days, just 9 days, and now the conversation belongs to everyone watching. What do you think really changed? Everything. And where do you stand when you look at the full picture? Because this story still isn't finished.